interesting thing, if you are just meeting us, my husband and I both came from a background in science, in the sciences. We have master's degrees in microbiology and immunology, and as I said at the panel discussion yesterday, it's been a very interesting time to pastor in a pandemic with that kind of training. But we really felt the heart of the local church, and it grew enough that we ended up shifting our career interests. And you wouldn't have heard me say this, but I always say I just shifted my research interests from microbiology to the kingdom. Yeah. And there are more mysteries in the kingdom even than there were.
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally. So at our church, it's really funny because we have a habit of incorporating a lot of not just science, the arts, all the things, but it's a very lateral thinking environment that we live in. So.
Well, I think it's quite funny that they've partnered me to talk to you, because I am not scientific whatsoever. The opposite, but that's okay.
That's good. That's all right. So, we need each other.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wrote down some of what you said this morning, and I loved even the title, "Who is this King of Glory?" And then you, quite early on, you said the church. Something about the church causing culture to ask questions.
Yes.
And I loved that. Do you want to say a bit more
Yeah,
about that?
Sure. What this morning I quoted, a friend of ours once said that the church is fond of answering questions people haven't yet asked. So what I saw in the Bible was a projection of something God wanted to do, which is birth questions in culture that the church is then ready to answer. And I think it's nervousness on our part that we jump ahead to the answer, because we so want to please God. We so want to do it right. We so want to live the Great Commission. So for me, the process has been learning that we need to be demonstrating some things that generate questions. How come you're pulling from somewhere else?
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
One time I spoke at a place, this just came to me. I spoke at a place, and when I sat down, there was an older, very seasoned woman of God that she just turned to me and she said, "You're not from around here, are you?" And it was a very Texas, way to say it. But I think really we kind of all need to have some sense in our life that we're generating somebody to go, "You're not quite from just around here, are you? What's this extra mystery dimension?" And I'll throw in one more thing. Yeah. It was funny, we were chatting before about, is there anything you didn't get to say? And I said, no, I said, and then, no, there is. Can you believe it?
Say it.
Yeah. So this is what I love. I talked a little about reconciling East and West, the left and the right hemispheres of the brain. Okay, if anybody's ever read The Voyage of the Dawn Treader by C.S. Lewis, it's wonderful. There's a little, and he's a mouse, I think, Reepicheep, and he talks about the utter East. And he said this quest for the utter East is like a spell over his life. And it says, when you find the utter East where the waters go sweet, do not doubt that all you seek will be there. If you really think about it in terms of moving eastward, the utter East becomes the West. So I believe the utter East is the place where East and West are no longer divided. It's an integration. It's a whole brain place. So we should all be Reepicheep. I think that may have some other symbology in the actual voyage, but isn't that good?
Yeah, so good.
We're questing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing I really loved that you were talking about God wanting to reveal His glory in the context of real life and in the mess and all that kind of stuff. And culture is king until Jesus arrives. Oh, love that. Love that.
Yeah. Because Haggai says He's the desire of nations. So as much as we want to look at a culture and think, oh, they're so bad, most of the time underneath that there's some redeemable quest that they're searching for. They're just finding it in all the wrong places. So culture is king because we unconsciously follow. We were joking at lunch because we were having a whole discussion of culture. Actually, someone told me they went ahead and took the test I referenced.
Oh, okay,
and so we were discussing all of that. But one of the things that makes me laugh so much, and this is a very American thing to say, is there are people that when you teach on culture, they say, well, I'm not influenced by any culture. I'm my own person. But in saying that, you're actually showing which culture you were influenced by, which would be the culture of individualism, and
Absolutely,
So I think someone once said, there's a few quotes I love. One is, culture is the fourth dimension. So we can see a country or a nation in 3D, but the fourth dimension is what are those inner drives. And I believe that, I don't know if I could say every, but I think maybe at the root of it all, every inner drive is something that's already redeemed in Christ for the right expression. So that's what I meant by that. Yeah,
absolutely. Brilliant. Yeah, that's so good. And you were talking at length about the integrative worldview, combining things that should never been separate and restoring to wholeness what should never have been fragmented. Yeah. What brought you to that sort of?
Well, years. But also, the more I think about, I'm fascinated with the Garden of Eden, the fall of man, and what it broke in people. And it's been so oversimplified as it simply broke relationship with God, and relationship with God was restored. Yes, but that's that fall and redemption part. It broke everything. And so one day, I'm passionate about fractals, which are branching patterns, infinitely repeating. And one of the classic examples of a fractal is a simple tree. Every tree is a fractal. And in fact, in a forest, not only do trees branch in the same repeated patterns, but they've done research now that even the forest placement of the trees branches in that same fractal pattern. So God, Romans 1 says, nature reflects his wisdom. Clearly, he thinks in these patterns. And so one day, after years of following that and just, meditating on what that meant, it just hit me, like it's been there all along, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, or the tree of life. So there's two different ways of following this pattern. There's a pattern of wholeness, one thing, life, or there's a pattern of fragmentation. And it's a real hot topic right now to talk about dualism, and it should be, because dualism is that fragmentation that makes us draw a line and say, okay, you're not. Anytime we judge unplugged from God, we judge and we say good and evil, instead of seeing life, and then the converse of that, of course, is death, but it's not even part of the wholeness, So I see the garden as the ultimate place of the beginning of the fragmentation, and then it just reaches into every corner.
And while you were describing that, I was reminded again about the vine. Jesus using the vine analogy, because that's another.
That's exactly right. I'm the vine, you are the branches, and the whole vine analogy. We always love to say this, is that the sap, the life flow, the nutrients flow. Whatever branch is there, if it's life, it's going to flow through all of that. We're nourished by the same life that Jesus is.
Totally.
So that's great.
One of the things I love that you put up, one of the images that will stay with me, because I love pictures, is that one of all the identical crosses, and then all those other amazing.
Oh, they're expressive crosses.
Yeah, I loved that.
And do you know what's I'm so glad you asked about that, because I think it was 15 years ago, maybe 20, when I first spoke at Swanwick. I had a very primitive graphic form of that same concept.
Oh, did you?
So that's a, and I've retired it a million times.
And it keeps.
I feel like the Holy Spirit's still using that very simple graphic. And another thing that happens, I think there are a lot of people in the room that would have seen it before.
Right.
But if you see it for the first time, inevitably, almost everyone in the audience goes, "Which one are you?"
Yeah.
That's me. Oh, that's me.
Yes.
I love that, because that tells us. I did it with youth a lot when I was speaking to youth, and that's what they need. They need to have the hope that in the cross there's something of what makes them come alive. There's a quote that says, "The world needs people who've come alive."
Yeah, love that.
So,
and it's that unity, but not uniformity.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Which the throne is the place of the most diversity, but not in man's terms of diversity. It's actually creative. God wisdom, diversity. Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. The flux event, the flux transfer event, just
Yeah. So I closed with this. This was research from 2008.
Yeah.
And we on Earth have a magnetic connection to the sun. That's how solar particles get here. But scientists always believed it was like a continuous thing, like a solar wind, like a gentle thing. And in 2008, they identified that it's actually every 8 minutes an actual portal opens up, and high energy solar particles flow into this column through the Earth. I didn't mention today, but that's actually sometimes we see it in the Northern Lights. So,
really?
But even when we see nothing, it's still happening. And the great article that I first read in 2008 when it came out, they said, it was just a little short blog-like article for non-scientists, and it said, while you've been reading this, perhaps one opened right over you.
I love that.
So it was just pregnant with the fact, because Christians always say, well, I didn't feel anything. And I guess the passion of my heart is come alive, because God's always moving. We are never waiting on Him. We're just learning how to tune in.
Totally.
And so the word the scientists you describe it is bursty. And I just really felt like the Lord said, and if you're watching, any of these from this conference, I really felt like the Lord said He had some flux transfer events for us, where He would burst the worldview of heaven on us in whatever way we needed. The glory of God. If there's portals in the natural between the earth and the sun, how much more is there real portals between heaven and earth? And He's able to overwhelm us with supercharged particles.
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that. You actually quoted Apollo 13.
Yes.
One of my favourite movies.
Yes.
And it
too.
struck me as well, and we'll perhaps finish with this.
Okay.
There's a moment where they're in the control room, and somebody said, this could be NASA's greatest disaster. And the guy says, on the contrary, this could be our finest hour.
Bingo.
Yes.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Yes, that was Ed Harris's character who said that. It's one of my favorite moments in that movie.
Me too.
And you're so right. I do believe. And what's funny is 15 years ago, I was excited about postmodernism, and I was actually saying phrases like that. This could be our finest hour.
Yeah.
But now I'm saying, no, really, now. Even
totally.
more, this could be our finest hour.
And I think the whole pandemic thing and the whole, I think we can come out, we can emerge
Exactly.
the church.
Exactly.
In our finest hour.
And it's not a brand new imagining of the church, as was said this morning. It's actually what the church has always been made to be, because it's the life of Jesus expressed through all these multiple crosses of people.
Fantastic. Well, it's been great to chat to you. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah. Great to see you.